The Vatican is returning to old rules, but Jeshua never followed them. Hey guys, it's John sitting here in the studio drinking my fabulous mug of coffee. As many of you know, I am a recovering Catholic, or actually, technically, I guess I would say I'm a recovered Catholic. But the interesting thing about the Catholic Church is it shifts. It moves back and forth like a tide. Sometimes it's a high tide, sometimes it's a low tide, sometimes it's a stormy world, and sometimes it's a calm world. Right now, we are in the middle of an uprise of a storm. You know, the Vatican is shifting towards conservative stances, and conservatives meaning hardline Christian stances. They're cracking down on the LGBTQ community, inclusion, et cetera. They're literally leaning in to these what they call traditional values, and understanding the word traditional means their tradition, what they believe. But let's talk about the rebel who loved unconditionally, who didn't look at the politics of the time, who didn't look at the religious orders of the time as truth or fact. He simply loved. That man, that rebel, was Jeshua ben Joseph, my friend, my buddy. Problem is as they're going back to old dogma, dogma controls. It's literally about control. I don't like the fact that you love differently than me, so I'm going to control that. You know, I don't like the fact that we have to allow people in the world to express themselves and you know, or allow people who are in a bad marriage to actually get out of it. You know, the idea of this is this concept. My mother, master's degree in liturgy, at the end of her life told me that had she not been Catholic, she would have divorced my father years earlier. You know, but she couldn't because she was Catholic, right? You know, the rules of the church are not from love, and they're literally prisons. They're when the Catholic Church asked people why they left, the number one answer was freedom. They felt imprisoned by the rules and doctrines and dogmas. But Jeshua really expressed radical inclusivity. He literally loved everyone. He was touching lepers. He dined with sinners. He praised widows. You know, his teachings broke with religious norms intentionally. In fact, he said, before Abraham was, I am. Abraham was the direct representation of the Jewish faith. He was saying before there was a religion, that's where we need to go back to just living in the I am and loving and caring for one another. What the church forgot was that Jeshua never talked about hierarchy. He never talked about needing a middleman between you and God. He said, you are one with God. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Ye are God's. He taught direct connection to the divine, and that went directly against the power of Rome, and it went directly against the religion of the time. You don't need an institution to be holy. This concept of needing the institution to be holy is creating an idea that the institution is more powerful than you. But Jeshua said, you are the power. All the power is within you, and you can be that power. But the interesting thing is, the churches are always focused on trying to get to heaven ahead of you. Jeshua talked about being loved now. Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. Being in the here and now and loving is what Jeshua taught. The church teaches these dogmas, these rituals, these ideas that are all about things that are happening ahead of you. The idea that here in the now, you know, the church is telling you have to go back to these Pauline teachings. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Coffee Time with John. This channel runs off coffee, so get your coffee and tea at johnsjoe.com. I want to remind everyone that Paul never met Jeshua in life. Neither did Luke, who was Paul's disciple, or Timothy, who was Paul's disciple. When you look at these things, you know, these are people who never met Jeshua in life. They were espousing Pharisee teachings, the concept of celibacy and all that. That's not from Jeshua. That's from Pharisees. So over 50% of the New Testament is written by people who never met him in life. The other part of it is written by Greco-Roman Christians, some 70 to 200 years after the crucifixion, who never met Jesus in life. The books are all written anonymously. And then the names, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were added to the text in the second century. So it's not even, the book itself has nothing to do with what Jeshua actually taught. The entire book, when somebody says, well, Jesus says, even I say Jesus said, right? But in reality, anything that you see Jesus said in the Bible is hearsay. And the people who say he said it never met him in life. They weren't there when he said it. So everything you're looking at is hearsay. And everything being hearsay, we have to take it as hearsay. Hearsay does not hold up in a court of law. Why should it hold up in the court of spirituality? That's a huge question, because if we choose it to be our faith, that this hearsay that is manipulated. There are so many. To give you an example, the Sodom and Gomorrah. The people are constantly using Sodom and Gomorrah as the rail against homosexuality. People come to the house to see these strangers who have come, and they tell Lot to let them come out so they can be with us. Now, the people who are leaning into the homophobia start to say that, well, let them come out so that we can be with them means let them come out so we can have sex with them. And they say the word to be in that time period means have sex with, to be with. And scholars don't agree on that, but people will lean into it to find their own values, their own traditional values in the text. So in other words, you can find your argument in the text. I can find my argument in the text. My argument is that God is love, and Jeshua taught love. I found it in the text, right? I also found horrible atrocities in the text. I don't think God sending 2 bears to kill 42 children because they made fun of a bald man was loving. So I don't believe it's of God. I think it's a story of 2 bears who killed a bunch of kids. And I think that they retroactively added God into that story. You don't need an institution to be holy. You don't need a politics to be holy. You can live in the now and honor the spirit of Jeshua by living like he did. Bold, present, love. So ask yourself this. Who in your life is living into these doctrines of fear and division and separation? And how can you just show them what love really is today? Go out there and show them what love is. Just be the simple love. You don't need to rail on them. You don't need to go out there and say, you need to love. You need to be the example so they can see the example. No one wants to be told what to do, but they all want to figure it out on their own. And what the interesting thing is, they are. 54% of Christians have left the faith over the past 20 years. The faith is dying, as are all faiths. They're all dying. Why are they dying? Because people are leaning into love. And that's a beautiful thing that's happening in the world today. And so, as the Catholic Church tends to go backwards, don't go backwards with them. Stay here in the present, be loving, be what Jeshua taught, and the world will change eventually. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.